You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Well, hey there, folks. We're back. Welcome to another episode of the Just Japan podcast. It is episode 231. Hisashibari, long time no talk to. Sorry about that, guys. My name is Kevin O'Shea. I am the host of the Just Japan podcast. I've only been putting out about one episode a month this fall, and hey, that's where we're at, but we're back. Second episode this month, continuing with the walking and adventure theme. And the last episode, in episode 230, I chatted with my friend Kevin Tarpey about his walk during the 88 Temples pilgrimage on Shikoku. He's a fantastic storyteller with a great voice, and he always has great yarns to weave, tales to tell. That's fantastic. And we're going to be continuing on with the walking theme, which is great because I love this type of adventure. Now, I just got back from Kuala Lumpur, KL, a few days ago, and while I was there, there is the most magnificent bookstore in the world. There is a Kinokuniya in the Surya KLCC shopping mall, the base of the Petronas Towers, and that Kinokuniya is expansive, it's massive, and it's incredible. And I was finally able to get my hands on a physical copy after so many years of The Roads to Sata by Alan Booth, the British writer and humorist, who this book is a 2,000-mile walk through Japan. And I have never read it. For years and years and years, I've been told by so many people, by countless people, that it is the definitive walking adventure book about Japan, and that Alan Booth's writing style is so funny. Unfortunately, he died at a very young age, I think just in his early 40s, back in the 1980s. But everyone says, Kevin, you have to have this book. So I do have a copy of it now, and I'm very happy about that. I've read Will Ferguson's Hitching Rides with Buddha, which I think was also called the Hokkaido Highway Blues, which is about the Canadian humorist Will Ferguson hitchhiking across Japan. And I think that was inspired by the Alan Booth book. So fantastic. I'm really happy to have that. And I'm really happy to have a returning guest on episode 231. Tony Vega, Tony.Vega, is back on the Just Japan podcast to talk about another fantastic walking adventure. It's almost a year to the time he was on the podcast before. He was featured in episode 208 when Tony came on and talked about his adventure walking the Tokaido Road. In fall of 2023, Tony walked the entire Tokaido Road. He walked 500 kilometers from Kyoto to Tokyo. It's an amazing, challenging adventure for anyone, but Tony is legally blind, so even a bigger adventure and a bigger deal, and it's really inspirational. And Tony is a great storyteller with a great sense of humor, a great laugh, and a great voice. So it was really fun to catch up with Tony just a few nights ago to talk to him for episode 231 about his most recent walking adventure. He walked from Kyoto, Japan, 400 kilometers to Yamaguchi, Japan, Yamaguchi Prefecture. He was initially going to be going to Miyajima in Hiroshima Prefecture, but he decided to walk further, and he got to Yamaguchi. And Tony was kind enough to sit down with me and talk about this. Now, of course, Tony is also the host and producer of the Japan Station podcast, and he runs JapanKyo.com. And it was just fantastic, and you guys are going to enjoy his story of another epic walk through Japan. All right, folks, we're back. It's another episode of the Just Japan podcast, and with us is returning guest, consummate walker, adventure, man about town. It's Tony Vega. Tony, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. It's an honor and a pleasure to be back and be talking with you again.
Yeah. So, the last time you were on was earlier in the year, and you were talking all about your adventure back in 2023. Am I right? Yeah, about where you walked the Old Tokaido Road. And you've got a new adventure. But before I jump into that, I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I always have to remember, I should say, that there could be some people who are listening to the Just Japan podcast for the very first time, and they are not familiar with that episode. So I will suggest to everyone, once you listen to this one, go back and listen to the other episode with Tony. But could you tell everyone just a little bit about yourself and your Japan connection?
Sure. So, I became interested in Japan a very long time ago at this point. I was probably like in junior high when I really started to get much more serious about it and bought a book and all that. And from there, it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. Lived in Japan, worked in Japan, did jet program. We happened to live like next to each other, but we didn't really know it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, at the time. And anyway, yeah. So I'm a writer, content creator. I've been the editor in chief of a Japan focused magazine here in Hawaii, where I live. And I run JapanKyo.com. I produce the Japan Station podcast. I'm running the JapanKyo YouTube channel as well. I do hosting on X Spaces and all that. Like that's kind of my job at the moment, but yeah, I do a lot of stuff. It's all Japan focused, and I also happen to be doing a lot of walking these past couple of years in Japan.
Yeah, and I mean, as we were joking around earlier, maybe the Just Japan podcast will be the Just Japan walking podcast, because I've got a lot of walking themed episodes. I mean, very recently I took an older interview, an interview from a couple of years ago with my friend Kevin Tarpey, who did the 88 Temples pilgrimage in Shikoku. And I aired that podcast. And Kevin's a good friend of mine and a consummate walker, a true walker. I mean, he writes an article for a newspaper kind of in rural, kind of Shimane Ken, about his walking and the walking he does. And we know we got Kurt Bell's back in Japan, he's Softy Papa, the old Walking in Japan channel. And then we've got Tony walking here. I guess
we're walking here.
we're walking here, guys. We're walking. I mean, yeah. I did walk 32,000 steps in KL the other day. I was pretty impressed with that. My son was dying. He was with me the whole time. Well, it was his idea. We're looking for different electronics markets and stuff, and wandering around, and it just made more sense. It was it probably saved us time walking instead of trying to take taxis. But yeah. So you just last year you had your big adventure where you walked the Old Tokaido Road, and this year you had a new challenge. So tell us about it. What kind of what foolishness did you get up to this year?
Oh boy, yeah. So, like you said, last year I did Kyoto to Tokyo, roughly the Tokaido Road, around 500 kilometers. This year I wanted to keep the adventure going. This year, 2024, in the fall, so October. And so it was either I go northeast, like towards Tohoku from Tokyo, or I go from Kyoto west. And I decided I don't want to go to Tohoku because that gets really rural, like super, super rural. I'm not ready for that yet. So I decided I'm going to go. I love Kansai. I lived in Kansai. I was like, okay, I'm going to get to walk across Kansai, so I'm going to go west. So what I did was I called it the Miyajima Challenge because I wanted to do somewhere between 400 to 500 kilometers west from Kyoto. And it just so happened that from Kyoto to the very famous island of Miyajima, where there's that floating, well, it's not actually floating. It looks like it's floating over the ocean, this Torii gate, those shrine gates. Yeah. There's an island there with a deer and all that. That's called Miyajima. So from Kyoto to Miyajima, it turned out to be right around 400 kilometers. So I thought, this is perfect. It's like such a beautiful ending to this big walk. So that's gonna be my goal. And I did it. There was a lot of stuff that happened along the way, and I actually ended up walking 20 kilamers past that into Yamaguchi Prefecture because I had an extra day. But a lot of stuff happened along the way, but that's the general idea. And why am I doing this? Basically, because, well, I love to explore Japan. I've been there so many times that I'm trying to do this in a new way, but also I happen to be legally blind. I have no central vision. So for me, this is a new way to experience Japan, to explore Japan in a new way, and also like show that, for example, someone like myself, a person with a visual impairment, is capable of these crazy things that even most sighted people would never think to do. Yeah. But I try to give this kind of a positive message and while I'm on the journey, I document it all on Instagram and X especially. I post videos every day. I post photos every day and all the craziness that happens along the way just to show how I overcome the challenges that come my way.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I mean, it's interesting. I think I myself have always been a walker. It's something I've always loved doing. Ever since I was, living on my own as a young single guy living in cities, even in Canada, I've always loved going out for walks, especially at night for whatever reason. I like to go for walks. When I lived in Kobe, around the same time you were living in Kobe, I would go for walks every night. It was just my thing, my way to unwind, my way to just kind of relax. I also like photography, so I take my camera with me. And I can remember before I moved to Japan, I had read the book by the Canadian humorist writer Will Ferguson called Hitching Rides with Buddha. It's also known as Hokkaido Highway Blues, and where he had been a jet and he hitchhiked across Japan. And I just finally, after all these years, I finally picked up a copy when I was in Kuala Lumpur earlier this week at the Kinokuniya bookstore. I got my hands, the Kinokuniya bookstore in KL is just, it's amazing. It's a book paradise. But I finally got The Roads to Sata by Alan Booth. And I'm going to be digging into that this week. I'm excited. So I love these walking adventures. And I mean, last year I was following you and I loved following you on X. You were putting on videos every day and following your adventures and misadventures, because it wasn't always easy. I can remember you last year kind of like at places where you'd like run out of road. The road would kind of disappear or, it was just, you had to cross a whole bunch of roads. And this year you also had a lot of challenges. And I can remember following some of those videos, like where I don't know, I'm going to be wrong potentially here, out past Himeji or near Himeji, where there would be like these big, drainage ditches on the side of the road, these big giant open deep like pits, there's just and then you had some encounters with the police. So I'm wondering, could you just share your story? Tell us about the trip this year, the highs and the lows.
Sure. So when I started this, I anticipated that from Kyoto. So I started where I started last year, actually, Sanjo Hashi, so the bridge at Sanjo, I don't know, 3rd Avenue, I guess you could literally translate it as that, but the street in Kyoto. Yeah. And I walked from Kyoto to Osaka and then on to Kobe and then towards Himeji. And I anticipated that once I got past Kobe, things would start to get more tricky because it starts to get more rural, right? And from Kyoto to Kobe, it was just really, really easy. It was like ridiculously easy, so much so that I was worried like I wouldn't have any interesting stories to tell.
Okay. There would be no challenge.
Yeah. Like
I ate an onigiri and then happened. I walked and then I got more onigiri and then I walked more and then I was done.
Yeah, and then I remember, like, because I was shooting video the whole time, and I remember talking to myself, but talking to the phone, like, I'm going to regret saying this, but this is too easy right now. and it got much more difficult past Kobe. And once I started approaching Himeji, that's like the first big like challenge that happened. And what happened was I was walking mainly along route number 2. So that's like these public highways that run across Japan. There's a bunch of them. They're not toll roads. They're just, long, big roads. Okay. And they are based on, a lot of them are based on old roads, like historic roads. For example, route number 1 runs mainly along like the Tokaido or in that vicinity, right? So last year in 2023, I was walking a lot around that area in the route number 1. It's mainly trucks and cars just zooming by. It's not pretty. and this year it was route number 2. And again, the same kind of thing, like trucks zooming by. It's not fun at all. But I got to this point where Google Maps told me to walk off the road, but I didn't realize I was walking off route number 2 and going off somewhere else, because a lot of times Google Maps just takes you down the shortest road. That doesn't mean it's the safest or best or most convenient road.
Yeah.
Especially for someone like me who can't see the street signs and feels like, oh crap, I'm going somewhere I shouldn't be going. And it turned out like after probably somewhere between 1 or 2 kilometers of walking off of route number 2, I ended up walking onto a highway on ramp, and by that point I was like, this is not right. Like, I don't think I should be walking here. And some guy like pulled off and said, "Oh, you shouldn't be there." And so he walked me off, and he said, "Oh, you need to go back to like route number 2, and it's really, really down that way." And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So start walking back. And I don't know, walk quite a while. And then somebody pulls off the road. It's like, "Oh, hey, did you just walk up like the highway?" It's like, "Oh yeah, that was probably like 30 minutes ago." Like, what happens? Like, "Oh, the police are looking for you." It's like, "Oh no, oh no, what happened?" And so he's like, "No, it's okay. It's okay." Cause I explained like, "Look, I have my cane and I can't see very well. And so Google Maps told me like, go this way." And he's like, "Oh yeah, no problem, no problem." So he calls the police and he tells them like, this is what happened. It was nothing like like illegal or anything. Well, I don't know if it was technically, I guess it was technically illegal, but he's like, it wasn't ill intent or anything like that. He just
Accidentally illegal.
Can't see very well.
Yeah. I accidentally broke
like,
the law, ma'am.
Yeah. Google Maps, blame it, but it was Google Maps. So he explained it all for me. It's like, "Can you wait there?" Oh, okay, fine. So they're going to send the police over. There was this whole big thing, like 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes waiting. And then the police came and they asked me like the same thing, like 10 different ways. And they were nice and all. But like that day, I ended up wasting probably like 2 hours just between getting lost and then the police. And, but by the end of it, they let me go. And during that time when I was like waiting in that convenience store, because he stopped me at a convenience store. First of all, the guy that stopped me bought me a drink. So he didn't have to do that, but he was very nice. And then the clerk was asked me like, "Oh, so what's going on?" And so I explained, and she's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" Like, "Oh, okay." And then she waited for. She had to leave because her shift ended, but she waited for me, and then she gave me a ride back to route number 2, which was like 500 meters away. Mm-hmm. So many times throughout this trip, and the last one too, like just people were incredibly nice. They see me holding the cane, so they understand pretty much immediately, like I can't see very well.
Yeah.
And I had multiple times where people, just asked me if I needed help. And a lot of times I did need help. And they gave me like a little ride, like 200 meters, like, "Actually, you shouldn't be walking here, but let me give you a ride past this part. And then you can start walking again because the sidewalk starts up again." Or just a lady that was, again, a different lady waiting for me in her car after she gave me directions because she wanted to make sure that I got to the right place. And she's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're there. I was so worried, but I'm just going to take you like the 500 meters to the next thing." Like just multiple people in these rural areas of Japan, especially, that just helped me out and made sure that I was safe, and always just so grateful for that. So, that was the first kind of big incident that happened, but other stuff happened along the way as well.
Those acts of kindness really remind me, like how you had just mentioned before we were recording, how you would listen to my 88 Temples pilgrimage episode with Kevin Tarpey. And there was a story he shared about, I remember how like a truck passed him, and then it later it came back again, and the truck driver had seen him walking, and the truck driver went into a convenience store and like bought onigiri and like some kind of drink, and then came back to like stop him and give it to him. Like those, it's pretty amazing when you hear these acts of kindness by strangers. It gives us hope in the world, because of all the crazy that happens maybe where we're from. It's nice to hear these stories for sure.
It really is. And even like in the cities, like I would be in a train station kind of lost, and I'm kind of, I can see well enough to see like stairs, train platform and stuff, but sometimes I can't find the right train platform, right? Because there's a bunch of them. And then somebody will notice and they go, like even in Tokyo, this happened. Go, "Oh, do you need any help?" And I'm looking for this line. "Oh, just come with me." So like, it's not just a rural thing. In the rural thing, I definitely, I stick out more, and people might give me like a quick ride in the car. But like even in a Tokyo train station, when I'm trying to like get to one of the farther away platforms or whatever, people do come up and ask me like, "Hey, do you need any help?" or whatever. And sometimes I say no, sometimes I say yes, but just so many kind people just all over the place.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you as you got past Himeji, you had, well, you're around that, you had the encounter with the highway. Were there any other like did you have any incidents of like bad weather? kind of really getting lost at any point. There was one video I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had to walk over a tunnel, or you were walking on this leaf covered or heavily forested like little lane, and you were talking about like you were walking over, was it over a mountain or over some kind of tunnel or something? And I just remember it was like, wow, that's like there could be a bear jump out at any moment and eat this guy. Like that's you were really off the beaten path.
Yeah. So like once I got past Himeji, we start to get into like right before Okayama, and then there's a bunch of mountains, and that's basically the border with Okayama. And Okayama is very rural. There are more rural areas of Japan, but for that area of Japan, Okayama is quite rural. And so here's the thing, like I should do more research before I do this stuff, but I do minimal, if any, research.
Okay.
I just gotta go that day. Like what I do is I because of my eyesight, I can't walk as quickly sometimes as like a sighted person, because I get lost along the way. Stuff happens, and so like I usually tried to keep it between 20 to 25 kilometers. There was like maybe 1 or 2 days where I did more, but between all the like getting lost, sometimes I end up walking more anyway. So I can't make as much progress as I would like to, but. So what I do is I try to find a train station that's about 20, 25 kilometers away from where I'm going to start that day.
Okay.
And then I just start going.
Nice.
And so I got to West Himeji, and I got off the train station that I had left off the day before, and I tried to get out from the train station. I got kind of lost, and this like 90-year-old guy, he comes up, he's like, "Oh no, you got to go this way. Let me walk you." He's like really energetic, this really like, totally clear-minded, very, healthy 90-year-old guy, has a cane, but yeah, a great guy. And he's like, "Okay, look, you're going to have to go this way, but there's going to be a point where you're going to either have to walk off to like the north, and because it's going to split off because there's mountains, or you're going to go straight ahead and there's going to be a tunnel, but you can go over the tunnel." Like, okay, oh crap, I didn't know this was coming. Okay, thank you. So start walking. And he told me like 6-7 kilometers, but I'm pretty sure I walked way past that, probably like around 10 kilometers. And I'm thinking like, oh, I guess I must have gone a different route. I guess I'm okay. And then bam, the tunnel's there. And I go, oh my God, okay, what am I going to do with this tunnel? Because it seems like I can't walk through this tunnel. Mm-hmm. And so I walk back quite a ways to the nearest. It wasn't a big intersection, but it was some kind of intersection. But there's very few people. There's no people walking around in this area. This is like only cars. And I'm standing there for a while, just looking for anybody that would like come to that like corner. And a lady sees me, and she stops as she's about to turn onto the main road. It's like, "Do you need any help?" So I ask her, "I'm trying to walk towards Okayama, but there's a tunnel there, and I think I can't go through that tunnel. Is there anything I can do?" It's like, "Yeah, you can just walk over the mountain." I go, "Okay, where?" "Just walk straight ahead." Like, "Really? Just straight ahead?" "Yeah, just straight ahead." And so that's the part that you saw in the video where it was all covered in leaves. And like also it was very shady because there's like trees on either side of this like kind of paved road. But it was like the fall foliage was starting to come down, I guess. And so it was covered in leaves. And so what I was doing was sometimes I could see that it was the paved part. Sometimes I couldn't. So I had to just feel it with my cane. And so when I would feel dirt, I go, okay, I guess I'm off the road. And so I'd kind of come back. And there were a couple points where I just didn't know if I was on the right part or not. And I figured, oh crap, I have to turn back. But I kept going, and at that point I realized like, oh, I'm pretty much over it. I'm pretty much at the end. And then I got over the mountain. I got over the tunnel. And I was so happy. Like I had such a sense of accomplishment that I had done this thing that I didn't intend to do. That was especially challenging for me because I couldn't clearly see the path. But things got even more difficult after that. So I walked, like probably like 6 or 7 kilometers more after that. And there's nothing in this area. There's no convenience stores. There's no gas stations. There's no anything that I can see that's a bathroom. There's very few houses. I got to like one area where there was some houses, but I couldn't find anywhere to like buy a drink or use the bathroom. And so I looked at my phone to try to find the nearest anything like a convenience store or a train station. It was a 2-hour walk away.
Oh, okay.
By this point, it was probably like the 3 o'clock hour.
Okay.
And so like it starts to get dark in the 5 o'clock hour at this point in the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not good for me because I don't want to be walking outside in like, when it's like 5:30 in this rural area. So, but I got 2 hours ish. Okay. So I'm going to try walk. And I keep walking. And I get to this point on the side of the road where I just can't go where Google Maps is telling me to go. There's nowhere to cross. If I try to walk back, I'm stuck. The road ends. And if I walk off the road, it goes like really rural. It seems like there's nothing down that area. And it's getting darker and darker and darker. And so for the first time ever, I decided like I have no other option than to try to hitchhike. Because I can't make it out of this little like pocket. Like I can't cross the road to where Google Maps wants me to go. And even if I did, I can't make it in time to the nearest civilization, to the nearest like, convenience store or whatever in the 2 hours that I need to walk there because it's getting dark. So I spent probably like 40 minutes trying to hitchhike. Nobody stops. I finally get to like a little area where it seems like easier to stop and somebody stops. And it turns out this was just really random, but it was a Syrian man with his wife who's Japanese. And I believe he was a Syrian refugee who came to Japan around like 2012 when he was like 12 years old or something. Now he's, an adult and all that in his 20s. And he speaks Japanese totally fluently. And he stops and he asked me like, well, so what's going on? And so I explain, he goes, oh, okay, yeah, get on. I'll give you a ride. And he's like, I'm not Japanese either. He's like, really? Like, okay, where are you from? And so we start talking. The whole way we're talking. His wife is just like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. And it turned out that he was going towards Kobe because his family lived in Kobe. And I was in Okayama and my hotel was in Himeji. All I wanted was a ride to the nearest train station. But he went, well, if your hotel's in Himeji, that's on the way to Kobe. So I'm just going to take you to your hotel. I go like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. So he told me like, it's a good thing you found me or somebody that give you a ride because you were in an area where there's like nothing. And once it gets dark, it gets very cold in that area. And like the tanuki and the deer and the boar and like everything come out. Like, yeah, you wouldn't have wanted to be there.
You would have been like eaten to death by tanuki.
Yeah.
American walker killed by raccoon dogs.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I did have a Japanese phone on me, so if it really came down to it, I could have called the police. I didn't want to do this because I had already run into the police.
I'm being eaten by raccoons. Help me.
Yeah. But just an incredibly nice guy.
Nice.
Like he kind of saved my life. I could have figured something out, but in a way, he kind of saved my life. And he was just so nice, and his wife was so nice. And 30-minute car ride back to Himeji. I'm just so grateful to him. But my error was that I should have gone. So because of the mountains, the train track split off towards the north, and the road number 2 keeps going through the mountains. Like literally like through the tunnels through the mountain, right? Okay. So I probably should have gone north, followed the train track, and maybe there would have been more stuff like, the convenience stores and all that in that area. But anyway, you live, you learn, and I made it out alive.
Yeah, here we are talking about it. And then, so your ultimate goal was to get to Miyajima, but you said you walked past that. You continued. Why did you change your plan and continue walking past there?
Sure. So I ended up finishing a day early. There were like 2 portions in Hiroshima that I did have to skip because it was just too desolate. There's a part that was like 18 kilometers of nothing. As far as I could tell, I had people check the map. It seemed like there weren't any convenience stores or anything. Like it was cutting through mountains and all that. So just to stay safe, I did omit that. But I ended up finishing 1 day earlier than I anticipated. And so I decided to keep walking because in 2025, in the fall of 2025, I want to walk as much as possible towards Kyushu, towards Kagoshima. So that
Okay.
would be another 500 kilometers potentially, if depending on the route that I take. So the more that I did in this second trip, the less that I would have to do in the third trip. So that's why I decided I'm just going to keep going, and I ended up in Yamaguchi Prefecture
Okay.
in Iwakuni.
What's the perfect segue? Because that's what I wanted to know. Like, what's so 2025 is coming. We're chatting right now on the evening of the evening for me of the 20th of December, and
Yeah.
the new year approaches. 2025 is coming quick. Well, tell us more about your 2025 plan. Yeah,
Yeah.
that you
So
by your own admission, you may or may not plan very well.
this time I'm gonna have to plan it better because Kyushu's gonna be more challenging. There's literally like two active volcanoes, right?
Mm.
um, and mountains, and
And
it's
with
just
Google
more
Map,
rural.
with Google, we know the way Google Maps is. It could potentially lead you up the side of one of those volcanoes.
Yeah, it's the shortest way.
It's the shortest. Why walk around it? You just walk over it.
Yeah, try to save you time. So basically, like if you just put in Google Maps from Miyajima to I believe to Kagoshima Station, I think it is 500 kilometers, right around there.
Okay.
But as we're talking about multiple times here, Google Maps, it's you can't rely on it in that way. So I'm gonna have to plan it more carefully, and realistically, there will be some areas that will be better if I just for my own safety that I don't do. But my goal is to walk somewhere between 400 to 500 kilometers. And I absolutely, for example, want to make it to Kumamoto and take some pictures and videos with Kumamon, and absolutely, yeah, and then make it to the bottom of Kagoshima, of Kyushu to Kagoshima. But for example, like one course that I may take will be go down to Fukuoka because that's pretty safe. Fukuoka's still like, pretty city. And then walk over to Nagasaki and then maybe take a ferry down to Kumamoto. And then from Kumamoto somehow make it to Kagoshima. So this is all still up in the air, but like I want to find the safest course, even if there might be like one or two ferries along the way. Like for example, from Honshu to Kyushu, I do have to take a ferry to make it to Mojiko and then down to Kita-Kyushu from Yamaguchi Prefecture, right? So
Yeah.
that's inevitable, but I want to find the safest way, because there will be some very rural areas. Now, I will likely do this again in September, October, November in that area because the weather is pretty good at that time of year. Also, flights are cheaper past the summer. But I do have to, try to raise funds and all that because, like, I joke about this, but it's the truth. Like, it took me like $11,000 and almost 2 months of walking to get to Miyajima from Tokyo when it could have taken me like $300 and like 5 hours.
Yeah, but what's the fun? What's the fun in that? What's the fun in that?
I know.
I wouldn't have you on the podcast if you're just like, I took the Shinkansen. Well, anything happened? Nah, I slept.
Absolutely. And I'm not complaining about that. I just, when you put it in that, way, right? It's just funny, right? It's like, why would you ever do that? Well, because it's an awesome experience. It's super unique. I've been to Japan, areas of Japan that I had never been to and probably would have never been to before. In my case, especially because I'm legally blind, I can't really enjoy looking out the window on a train so much, right? So for me, like it's literally like getting to see a lot of the stuff that somebody on a train would see. And I love that, right? Like when I got to the ocean right before Miyajima, I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, I'm here. Like I could see the ocean there, something that I maybe would not have been able to see from sitting on the train. Mm-hmm. Right? Like it was like an emotional moment for me. Like, and my friend was there with me that day. He happened to come down from Tokyo. And he's like, we can see it there. And so he pointed it out to me and I could actually kind of make it out on the phone and all that. Like I was just so freaking happy that I finally made it there. So this is all like there's deeper meaning to this than just saying like I walked it, right? For me, it's like I don't know. I know you worked in video games and all that, so maybe this works for you. But like in an RPG, right? Especially in those old 2D RPGs, when you would walk around in a dungeon and only the parts that you had been in were like light, right? Like you could actually see them. The rest of the rooms were still dark. Like that is how it is for me in a sense, right? Like I can only see very near in front of me, but as I walk and explore and experience the terrain, like it's lighting up for me, right? Like the map is kind of growing for me.
Gotcha.
Like that's how it kind of feels, right? So yeah, I spent $11,000 thanks to my sponsors. This was completely sponsored, and it took me like almost 2 months to do this. But I want to try to make it to Kagoshima. I'm gonna have to raise funds again. Another $5,000 is my goal. So we'll see. I'll make it happen somehow. But I want to at least make it down to Kagoshima. That's my goal, and I haven't planned anything after that. We'll take it one trip at a time.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's awesome. And we look forward to following that adventure. Wow, so cool.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to keep you much longer, good sir. I love this story. And for everyone else listening, if you're not already listening, go and check out the Japan Station podcast, Tony's podcast. You have there's a great episode recently where you share the story of your adventure on your own podcast. Yeah, that's so cool, man. So where can people find all the stuff you do online? Where can they? Yeah, I know you already mentioned it, but mention it again.
Sure. So japankyo.com is where I post all my podcasts, all my YouTube videos. If I write any articles, it all goes to japankyo.com. But of course, the podcast is Japan Station. And, if you're listening to this show, you might enjoy my show. And I also do Japankyo YouTube, where I talk a lot about anime and especially Dragon Ball. So if you any Dragon Ball fans out there, go check that out.
Nice. Go check out those links, folks. I'll put them in the show notes. Tony, thank you so much for joining us again on the podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. Always a pleasure.
Well, I want to thank Tony for taking the time to come back onto the Just Japan podcast. That was so fantastic to listen to his incredible story, his incredible adventure. Of course, you go to japankyo.com. You will find all of his stuff that he's doing. He is also, again, the host and producer of the Japan Station podcast, another fantastic podcast. If you are interested in all things Japan, you should go over there and check that out. Thank you so much, folks, for listening to this podcast, for downloading it, for supporting it. I really appreciate that so much. You guys are really awesome. I'm on winter holiday right now. I am an international school teacher, so I'm on winter holiday, and I've been banking up some interviewing some different people. I've got another one coming up very soon where I revisit Evan and Danny Benton of the Benton Homestead and get some updates about the amazing things that they're doing down there in Omishima. And Kevin Tarpey is going to be back on again. He just talked to us. Well, it was an interview from the Supernatural Japan podcast about his Shikoku 88 Temples pilgrimage, but he just went on another adventure too. So this is like becoming the Japan Adventure podcast. I joked to Tony, this should become the Japan Walking podcast, maybe the Japan Walking Adventure podcast. Who knows? All right. Well, guys, you can, of course, follow me on social media. I'm very active now on Blue Sky at Mad for Maple. You can find me over on Blue Sky. On Instagram at JLandKev. I do have a Facebook page. I do still have an X account on there sometimes. All those links will be below in the show notes. Reach out to me at any time. I would love to talk to you, chat with you, connect with you. That would be awesome. I also, of course, have a YouTube channel. I'm getting more active on that, posting more videos. Many of you came over to this podcast originally because of my YouTube channel, Busan Kevin at Busan Kevin. Go check that out. More content has been going up there lately. I just put up a great 20-minute vlog about some adventures I had with my son in Kuala Lumpur, and I just put up another one about the Central Market, and I'm going to be doing some filming over the holidays and putting up some kind of Malaysia-based content. Well, that does it for episode 231 of the Just Japan podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to give us a 5-star rating in Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to the podcast. That would be much appreciated. And please share this podcast if you liked it on your social media. Help us grow. There's a lot of Japan podcasts nowadays. And hey, help me stand out a little bit. All right. Well, that does it, folks, for another episode. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're happy. I hope you're healthy. Hope you're having a happy holidays. Merry Christmas and have a fantastic New Year, guys. That's it for me, and take care.
If you got a minute to